I have attended the Fenwick Parish Spring Recital every year for 31 years, which is to say every year since I moved here to take up the practice, and found, to my considerable surprise, that I had become the kind of man who attends such things. 31 years of folding chairs and programs printed on cardstock, of children playing Clementi sonatinas with their elbows too high, of Mrs. Alderton's plum cake at the interval, of the same damp smell rising from the floorboards when the hall warmed up. I have sat through recitals in which very little happened, and a few in which something almost did. I am 72 years old, and I thought, on the evening I am about to describe, that I had a reliable sense of what the spring recital could and could not offer a man of my age and experience. I was wrong about that. I am glad to have been wrong. The Fenwick Hall holds 120 when packed, 100 when comfortable, and on the night of the 23rd of April, it was packed to the window sills. Word had gone around, as word does in a village of 400, that there would be something worth seeing at the end of the program. That was, not, it should be said, the intended message. The intended message was a good deal more complicated, and it had originated, as most complications in Fenwick do, with Mrs. Constance Rowe. Mrs. Rowe has chaired the recital committee for 14 years. She is a retired schoolmistress, a woman of considerable local authority, and she applies to the management of the spring recital the same measured precision she once applied to the setting of examination papers. She is not, I want to be clear, a cruel woman. She is instead a woman for whom categories matter enormously, and into whose understanding of the world certain facts do not fit without adjustment. The fact in question was Alma. Alma was 9 years old, the niece of Pauline Drury, who runs our post office and is one of the most cheerful people I have ever had occasion to treat. Alma had come to live with Pauline the previous autumn. Following a family upheaval I will not detail here. She is a slight girl with dark eyes and a manner of attending to the world that I recognized from a long medical career as the particular alertness of someone who has learned to read it by means other than the obvious ones. Alma has been profoundly deaf since birth. She communicates in British Sign Language and by lip reading, the latter with a facility that I find quietly astonishing. She has been learning the piano, Pauline told me, since she was 4, first from her mother, then from a teacher in their former town, then, since the autumn, from old Mr. Hendricks, who gives lessons on Thursday afternoons in the back room of the church hall, and who told Pauline, in a voice I understand was not entirely steady, that in 40 years of teaching he had never encountered anything quite like her. Pauline entered Alma in the recital in February. I was present at the committee meeting. As the recital's honorary medical attendant, I have a seat, though I rarely use it for anything beyond nodding, when Mrs. Rowe raised the question of Alma's participation. She did it with great care, I'll give her that. She spoke of the committee's responsibility to all entrants, of the need for a supportive environment, of the importance of ensuring that Alma did not feel overwhelmed. She proposed, in a tone of settled generosity, that Alma be given a special slot at the very end of the program, after the interval and the senior performers, and that she be encouraged to play something short and appropriate to her situation. Something simple and manageable, a nursery piece, perhaps, which the audience could receive warmly as a gesture of cutie's inclusivity. Pauline was not at the meeting. No one spoke against the proposal. I should have. I did not. I told myself it was not my place, and that was, I think, the least honest thing I said that month. The word got around, as I say, not accurately, but in the way that village news travels, which is to say with the emotional content intact even when the particulars shift. People knew there was a deaf child playing at the end, and that she had been given a special slot, and the feeling in the village in the days before the recital was one of a community prepared to be kind. I noticed, when I took my seat 4 rows from the front on the evening of the 23rd, that the hall was full of people who had come, at least in part, to be generously disposed toward a 9-year-old girl. It is not nothing, that kind of goodwill, but it is a long way from what she deserved. The program ran its familiar course. There were 11 performers before the interval, a 12-year-old who played a Haydn minuet with genuine composure, 3 younger children whose efforts were received with the wholehearted encouragement that is the spring recital's primary gift to its participants, a pair of twins who performed a 4-hand arrangement that went approximately 1 beat apart for its entire duration and drew the evening's largest laugh. After the interval, two of the older students played with real accomplishment, a Scarlatti sonata, a Chopin waltz, and the room settled into the particular attentiveness that good amateur playing earns. Mrs. Alderton's plum cake was excellent. As always, I had 2 slices. Then the senior compere, a retired bank manager named Gerald Forsyth, who has introduced the Fenwick Spring recital for 9 years, came to the microphone and said, in a voice arranged for warmth, "And now, to close our evening, we have a very special performer. Please welcome Alma." I heard in the row behind me someone whisper to someone else, "The little deaf girl." It was said kindly. That was the worst of it. Alma came from the side of the hall. She was wearing a dark blue dress, and her hair was in 2 plaits, and she walked to the piano with the unhurried straightness of a child who has been told, and has fully believed, that she belongs there. She did not look at the audience. She sat, adjusted the bench with 2 turns of the knob, and this is the detail I have thought about most often, since, adjusted it not tentatively, in the manner of a child uncertain of what she needed, but precisely, with the economy of someone who knew exactly how far the keys needed to be from her body in order for everything else to work. She placed her hands in her lap. She looked at the piano. I do not know how long that pause lasted. It felt at the time like a consideration, like something being decided. I have wondered since whether she was feeling the bench for the low vibrations that tell her when her foot has found the sustain pedal, whether she was settling into some interior equilibrium I have no framework to describe. Whatever it was, when her hands rose from her lap and found the keys, the movement was so deliberate and so quiet that the back of my neck went before a single note had sounded. Then she played Grieg's to Spring. The 6th of the lyric pieces, Opus 43, begins with something that sounds like a question. 2 voices moving against each other, softly, a little uncertainly, the way the light moves in early April when it isn't quite sure yet that it's allowed to stay. I have heard the piece before on recordings, and I have always found it pleasant in the way that spring itself is pleasant, reliably agreeable, a known quantity. I did not expect what she did with it. She played slowly, not in the labored way of a child who has not yet mastered the tempo, but in the way of someone who has discovered, or perhaps always known, that the piece is in no hurry, and neither is spring, and neither is she. The first phrase moved through the room, and something happened to the air in the hall. I am a medical man. I am not given to mystical description. I will simply say that the quality of the silence changed. Not quieter, the hall had been quiet, but differently quiet. A silence with something paying attention inside it. The melody came in over that gentle rolling bass, and I felt, to my considerable surprise, my throat close slightly. Not from sadness. From something I recognized from very few moments in 40 years of medicine, the sensation of witnessing something that is entirely, completely itself. Alma played each phrase with the patience of someone who was not performing the music so much as accompanying it, as though the piece knew the way, and she was simply walking alongside. She could not hear it. That thought arrived somewhere in the middle section, and stayed with me through to the end. She could not hear the melody or the harmony, or the particular way the pedal held the bass notes into a kind of warmth in that wooden-floored hall. She was feeling the vibrations through the keys and the bench and the floor. She was reading the music through her palms and her fingertips and her wrists and her forearms in a manner I don't have the neurology to fully account for, and what came out was not a child approximating something beyond her, but a child delivering something that was precisely, exactly, and unmistakably hers. By the final section, the return of the opening theme, a little fuller now, the 2 voices gathered into something almost certain. No one in the hall was doing anything except listening. I am aware that is what a concert audience does. I mean something different. I mean that the 120 people in that room had stopped being an audience and become something more like a single organism that was breathing carefully, as though it did not want to disturb what was happening. The woman beside me, Helen Marsh, a retired district nurse who has attended this recital longer than I have, had both hands clasped in her lap and her eyes fixed on the stage with an expression I had seen, I realized, on patients. Not grief, not joy, the look of someone receiving something. The last chord settled, and the sustain pedal held it open, and Alma sat with her hands resting on the keys while it faded, and when it was gone she lifted her hands away very slowly, the way you close a door when someone is sleeping. For a moment, 2, perhaps 3 seconds, which is a long time in a parish hall after a child has finished playing, Nobody moved. Then Gerald Forsyth, standing at the side, began to applaud. He was crying. I could see that from 4 rows back. His hands came together, and the sound broke the stillness, and the hall rose. Not one person at a time, but the whole room, in the way that genuine things happen, as a single movement. I rose with them. Mrs. Rowe was in the 3rd row. I could see her from my seat. She was the last person in that hall to stand. She rose slowly, and she stood with her hands together, and the expression on her face was not the comfortable warmth she had arranged for that evening's act of community generosity. It was something older and less comfortable than that. It was the look of a person in the presence of something they had miscategorized, and who knows it, and for whom that knowledge is both the sharpest and the most necessary thing they have felt in some time. She did not speak to Pauline that night. She wrote a letter, I was told later. I do not know what was in it. Alma, for her part, turned on the bench when the applause began, and looked at the hall with those dark, still eyes, and then she found her aunt in the 4th row and smiled. Not the performance smile of a child taking a bow, but a private one, the smile of a girl who has done the thing she came to do and is ready, now, to go home. I walked home afterward through the village. It was a cool April night, the kind that still holds a trace of winter in it, and the lane from the hall to my gate is about 1/4 of a mile, which is just enough time to think if you walk slowly. I have spent 31 years in this village attending to its colds, and its fractures, and its bereavements, and its new arrivals, and I have a great deal of affection for it, but there are not many nights I walk home from it, feeling that something has been added that wasn't there before. I thought about what it meant to feel music you cannot hear. I thought about a 9-year-old girl adjusting a piano bench with the precise confidence of someone who has been doing this all her life. I thought about the particular silence of 120 people who have stopped thinking about themselves. I didn't have a conclusion, I still don't, but I have noticed in the months since that Fenwick is a slightly different sort of place to be in. Mrs. Rowe stood down from the recital committee in June. Alma has been given a full slot in next year's program. First half, a featured performer. Mr. Hendricks told me last week, when I ran into him outside the post office, that she has moved on to the Grieg concerto. He said it the way people say things they expect you to understand the significance of without elaboration. I told him I understood perfectly. I don't know if that's true, but I am 72 years old, and I have learned that the things you carry home from a spring evening without being able to name them are very often the ones that turn out to matter most.